Story 1. The moon hung low in the sky, casting an eerie glow over the desolate highway. Julia Matthews gripped the steering wheel of her old sedan, her heart pounding with a mixture of fear and adrenaline. She had been on the run for 3 days, ever since she stumbled upon a hidden cache of documents in her boss's office. The papers detailed a sprawling conspiracy involving high-ranking officials and a covert arms deal. Realizing the danger she was in, Julia had fled with the evidence, knowing her only chance of survival was to expose the truth. As she approached a small, isolated motel, Julia decided to stop for the night. Her nerves were frayed, and she needed rest. The motel was almost empty, its flickering neon sign the only sign of life. She checked in under a false name and double-locked the door of her room. Exhausted, Julia fell into a restless sleep, her mind racing with plans on how to reveal the conspiracy. She was awakened by a soft knocking at her door in the middle of the night. Fear surged through her as she crept to the peephole. A man stood outside, his face obscured by the shadows. "Who is it?" Julia called out, trying to keep her voice steady. "Miss Matthews, we need to talk," the man replied, his voice calm and authoritative. "I'm Agent Carter with the FBI. You're in grave danger." Julia hesitated, her instincts screaming at her to run. But something in Carter's voice gave her pause. Slowly, she unlocked the door, leaving the chain in place. "Prove it," she demanded. Carter slid his ID under the door. Julia examined it closely. It looked legitimate, but she had learned to trust no one. "How did you find me?" she asked, still wary. "We've been monitoring the people involved in this conspiracy for months," Carter explained. "When you went on the run, it didn't take long to connect the dots. But we need to move quickly. They're closing in on you." Julia's mind raced. Could she trust this man? She decided to take a leap of faith. She unchained the door and let Carter in. He explained that the FBI had been trying to gather enough evidence to take down the entire operation, but Julia's documents were the missing piece they needed. Together, they devised a plan to meet with a trusted journalist who could help bring the story to light. As dawn broke, they set out, aware that danger lurked around every corner. With Carter by her side, Julia felt a renewed sense of determination. She knew the road ahead would be perilous, but the truth had to come out. The stakes were high, and the clock was ticking. As they drove towards the rendezvous point, Julia couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. She glanced in the rearview mirror and saw a dark SUV tailing them. "They're here," she whispered, her grip tightening on the wheel. "Stay calm," Carter said, his eyes scanning the road ahead. "We'll lose them." Julia floored the accelerator, the engine roaring to life as they sped down the highway. The SUV matched their speed, drawing closer. Carter pulled out his phone, calling for backup. The tension was palpable as they raced against time. Just as the SUV closed in, a fleet of unmarked cars appeared, surrounding their pursuers. Carter's colleagues had arrived just in time. With the threat neutralized, Julia and Carter reached the journalist's office. The evidence was handed over, and the story broke nationwide, sending shockwaves through the political landscape. Julia knew her life would never be the same, but she had done the right thing. As she watched the news unfold, she felt a sense of relief wash over her. The truth was out, and justice would be served. Story 2. The icy wind whipped through the narrow alley as Detective Jack Harmon crouched behind a rusted dumpster, his breath visible in the frigid night air. He had been trailing Victor Marlowe, a notorious hitman, for weeks. Tonight, his efforts had paid off. Marlowe was meeting someone in this desolate part of town, and Harmon was determined to find out who. His heart raced as he peeked around the corner, watching Marlowe exchange a briefcase with a shadowy figure. The figure's face was obscured by a hood, but there was something unsettlingly familiar about his stance. Suddenly, the hooded figure glanced around nervously, and Harmon's blood ran cold. It was Tom Harris, his former partner, who had gone missing 6 months ago. Harris had been presumed dead, but here he was, alive and seemingly working with a known criminal. Harmon's mind raced with questions. Had Harris turned rogue, or was he undercover, deeper than anyone had suspected? He knew he had to confront Harris, but he needed to proceed carefully. One wrong move could blow his cover and potentially endanger his former partner's life. Harmon decided to follow them discreetly. They moved through the labyrinthine alleyways, eventually entering an abandoned warehouse. Harmon slipped in behind them, his footsteps silent on the cold concrete. From his hiding spot, he watched as Harris and Marlowe opened the briefcase, revealing stacks of cash and a set of blueprints. Harmon strained to hear their conversation, catching snippets about a high-stakes heist planned for the next day. The target, the city's central bank. The realization hit him like a punch to the gut. If this heist went off as planned, it would be catastrophic. Harmon knew he couldn't let this happen. He quietly retreated and called for backup, detailing the location and the imminent threat. As he waited for his team to arrive, he couldn't shake the image of Harris standing side by side with Marlowe. When the backup arrived, Harmon led the charge into the warehouse. A fierce gunfight erupted, with bullets ricocheting off metal beams and crates. Amid the chaos, Harmon spotted Harris aiming his weapon at Marlowe. Before he could intervene, a shot rang out, and Marlowe crumpled to the ground, dead. With the firefight over, Harris lowered his weapon and raised his hands in surrender. Harmon approached, his emotions a whirlwind of relief and betrayal. "Jack," Harris said, his voice steady. "I had no choice. I went undercover to take down Marlowe and his network from the inside. I had to disappear to protect you and everyone else." Harmon felt a weight lift off his shoulders. His former partner was not a traitor, but a hero who had risked everything. As they walked out of the warehouse together, Harmon knew this was just the beginning of unraveling the dark web Marlowe had woven. But for now, they had won a significant victory.